sometimes you just need to hear an old joke told in a different way. So this Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie thing that I very seriously would not have called was actually going to get made. This is pulling together really quickly, and as we have gotten a fairly steady drip of stuff over the last, little less than a week. But, we got our first look at Joaquin Phoenix's character, prior to Joker makeup. Then we saw a screen test where we got to look at what he looked like in makeup, and then some footage leaked of a subway scene. So there's been a bit, not a ton of official, but kind of a steady drip feed of things that are starting to create, I don't want to say a clear picture, but a picture, and one that I am finding increasingly intriguing. So my initial thoughts a while ago, when this thing was first being batted around, were it's not a bad idea, but it's probably not a good time. And my basis for feeling that was that at the time it was announced, Justice League hadn't come out yet. Things were very much in a state of it's super unclear where things are going. And DC was still very much trying to be like, no, we have a plan. We're building a coherent universe. At this point, that really feels like it's gone out the window. And it's much more, look, we're just gonna get movies out there and figure out what works. Although in an odd way, it feels a little less desperate now than it might have otherwise, because I think we're seeing them not get hung up on the continuity, which I think is a good thing. But when I had said initially, not a bad idea, but the wrong time, it struck me because basically I'm treating this like an Elseworlds, which if you don't know, DC Comics, that's what they call basically any story that is completely outside of continuity, and which frees it up to do crazy, wild things like Gotham by Gaslight, which was steampunk Batman. That's kind of thought of as the original Elseworlds, and then things like that. So thinking of this as an Elseworlds movie, that struck me as like, okay, that's not a bad idea, but maybe you should have a stronger foundation for what your main universe is before you do that. But now knowing the state of the DC continuity, which could very easily just get blown up if Aquaman does poorly, they'll keep Wonder Woman going, and they're probably gonna scrap everything else. But like with that still being in a state of flux, you know what? Why not do this weird oddball thing? And there's a number of things that I really like and I really find intriguing about this. First of all, I like that it's a much smaller budget. It's a $55 million movie. The funny thing about movies at that budget range, they don't get made very often anymore. Pretty much the budget range these days, it's either tentpole blockbusters, your $150 million plus movies, or they're your tightly contained films, either like indie films or things like Blumhouse, which does really tightly contained horror movies on like $10 million budgets. Nobody reliably does mid-budget anymore, which is a shame because this mid-budget is where you're spending enough money to be able to do some interesting things, but not spending so much where there's going to be a ton of high-end executive oversight either, because that's always kind of the danger with the big tentpole blockbusters, where you're spending that much money, the people at the top are really going to be scrutinizing all the parts of it. Whereas something on this mid-tier, not so much. I mean, like the last, I'd say, notable mid-tier budgeted movie we had was the first Deadpool, and even that was kind of by circumstance rather by choice. The Fox was prepared to spend more money on it, but only if they didn't go R-rated. So when they insisted on R-rated, they went, fine, you're not getting what normally would have been considered a proper size budget for what that movie was trying to be. So I like that I like the range that it's being made in. Joaquin Phoenix as a performer, I think he's an incredibly talented performer. He doesn't often do movies that have a ton of appeal to me. So, like, I don't have a serious opinion on him besides thinking that he is a good actor. I do believe that, but like I don't have a very committed opinion because it's been a long time since he's done something that I actually saw, because he doesn't tend to do movies that I like, which is fine. The director, that's a little bit more iffy, although I do like that Scorsese is producing. That's very cool. And I like that they've kind of cited Taxi Driver as sort of the thematic influence. And from what we've seen, what little we've seen, that makes sense. We sort of, the first image we got of Joaquin Phoenix without, any Joker makeup on, this is an aging guy who's probably just spent most of his life not really getting anywhere. And then just the grin that he has when he has the Joker makeup. And the Joker makeup, like, I can see where purists might be like, oh, that's all wrong. But I kind of like it. It's like, I would never want that to be the makeup of your primary continuity Joker, either in film or in comics or any of that. I'm like, I wouldn't want to look at it that much. But if you're gonna do something this far, out of what is standard for the Joker, why not? I mean, the fact that you're gonna cover the Joker's origin anyway is kind of outside the norm. And I know that sounds weird because, like, the first major Hollywood film for Batman 89, they did cover the Joker's origin. But you need to realize how weird that is, because one of the Joker's primary features is that we don't have a definitive origin for him. That's kind of one of the things that's really ingrained in him, that we don't know for sure what his name was, who he was, what he did, what made him go mad. We don't know. We have a ton of options with a ton of theories, ton of possibilities, some even, fairly likely, but we don't know for certain. That's one of the things that's cool about him. But, if you're going to go the direction of here's a definitive origin for at least a version of the Joker, you're already playing kind of outside of the normal way that you do this character. And assuming that there's no Batman, which is the pitch on the thing, yeah, just, don't feel so tied down, because there are tons of ways to honor one of the fun things about the Joker is he's a very malleable character. Like, I've actually yet to see a version of the Joker where I'm like, that's wrong. Because the Joker can be almost anything. There are versions that I prefer, but even the Jared Leto Joker, who I don't really like, I can't say that's an invalid direction to take the Joker, and that still works, because that's still Joker. That is a, madcap, modern, sort of Miami-style gangster version of Joker. But yeah, that's as valid as noir Joker from 89 Batman, from Agent of Chaos Joker, from The Dark Knight, the Mark Hamill Joker, the guy who is really actually it puts a lot of emphasis on the performance and the jokes of what he does. All of Cesar Romero being the more goofy kind of trickster, all of these are valid. All of these are ways to do the Joker. So I'm becoming increasingly intrigued. I'm not going to say I'm hyped, because it's really hard for me to get hyped up about any of the DC movies, just because the whole birthing process of this cycle of DC films has been so difficult, and so many stumbles along the way. It's really hard for me to get excited about any of I can be hopeful. I'm hopeful about a fair number of them, but it's hard for me to get genuinely excited. This one, though, I think is the one I'm most intrigued by for the stuff that's being worked on. I just find it really interesting, the ideas that they seem to be working with. They're working with a budget that should allow them to get away with delivering whatever it is they're planning to do. And so rather than me having to worry about, oh my God, is the studio going to come in and mess with this and insist on a bunch of notes that are going to make things worse, which happened on things like Batman versus Superman and absolutely Justice League, and Suicide Squad. The studio coming in and interfering isn't necessarily the reason those movies were bad. I think in most of those cases, the movie that they were messing with probably wasn't that good in the first place, but they made the situation worse. And whatever we got in the cases of those movies was not what was originally intending to be made by the people who actually made the dang thing. Whereas here, I think they're working on a budget range, and I think with the name of somebody like Scorsese shepherding it, we are at the very least going to get whatever the intended vision is. So now it's just on that vision to be good, which is still no small feat, but it's much more doable knowing that it's not going to have that level of interference or that level of oversight, or at least I don't expect that it will. I'm not gonna like super analyze the subway scene that leaked. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. There's like a ton of people in various sort of clown outfits. There seems to be like a building sense of chaos and anarchy going on in the area, and the Joker is either instigating it or at the very least feeding off of it. But again, I like that grin that Joaquin Phoenix gets. That is a very satisfied grin. That's a good way, I think, to go with this kind of Joker if we're doing a Taxi Driver style story where he's cutting loose. He is this new form of himself is him just getting to let all this stuff out and find something that gives him a very perverse kind of joy. And I think that can work really, really, really well. So, yeah, I'm oddly hopeful about this for something that I was super skeptical of previously. I'm gonna be keeping an eye on it, and I will be really curious to see a first trailer. Certainly, we're a ways off from that. They've only just started shooting the thing, but in I don't know 6 months or whatever, when we get a first trailer, I will be right there. I'll be real curious. So those are my thoughts on what we've gotten so far with this Joaquin Phoenix Joker thing that's happening. So what are your thoughts? Whatever they are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do because there's buttons and there's links down below. Take a look at them if you feel like it. There's a link to the Patreon. But if you don't want to, don't worry about it. And just remember, folks, you're the council. I just run the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned.